Costco is known for their bulk deals, free samples, and long lines, not for horror stories. But for night shift workers, those massive warehouses can feel very different after hours. To quiet, to cold, to empty. For those who work in the shadows, the crowds don't make the only creepy Costco encounters. To see what other terrors might lurk in those aisles, let's hear a tale about one worker's fateful night in the warehouse. It all started when a young man named Daniel found himself stuck covering an overnight restock in the frozen food section. Daniel was 22 years old, broke and desperate for extra hours. So when his manager asked if he could stay overnight to restock the frozen food section, he agreed without asking any questions. As he finished organizing boxes of frozen pizza and burgers, he began to notice the room was much colder than usual. He tugged his sweater tighter, tried to ignore it, and continued to work. That's when he heard something strange. A soft cry coming from the walk-in freezer. Paused and strained to listen. Was it a mouse? A rat? He tried to convince himself it was nothing. The sound came again, more insistent this time. He told himself he was crazy. No one else was in the store. In fact, no one was supposed to be in the store. Security had left hours ago. The employees were all gone. But still, he couldn't shake off the feeling that he was being watched. He opened the freezer door. It was dark inside. There were no windows. All he could see was the frosted glass shelves filled with rows upon rows of ice cream, popsicles, and frozen meals. It was always so neat and orderly here during the day. But now it felt oppressive, menacing. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The sound was coming from the back. He walked farther into the freezer, looking for the source of the noise. When he finally saw it, his heart skipped a beat. There at the back of the freezer was another door, a metal one. It looked out of place amidst the white tiles and freezer shelves. There was no handle, no signage or markings of any kind. It was as if it were meant to be hidden. But why? What was behind that door? Curiosity battled with fear in his mind. He wanted to investigate, but a sense of foreboding told him to run in the opposite direction. He knew he should leave, but he didn't. Instead, he pushed the door open. As he did, the freezer lights flickered and buzzed. Startled, Daniel whipped around. Just then, the crying grew louder, no longer a muffled sound, but clear and heartbreaking. It was definitely coming from inside the door, from whatever was hiding behind it. Fear jolted him into action. He slammed the freezer door shut and raced toward the front of the store. Relief flooded him when he saw the exit doors. He stumbled out, gasping for breath, adrenaline pumping through his veins. The cool night air hit him, and he shivered, pulling his sweater tighter around him. That's when he noticed his hands were shaking. He tried to stop, but the tremors wouldn't cease. And that's when he truly realized how cold he was. It was freezing. He checked his phone. 1:49 a.m. Only 2 minutes had passed since he'd entered the freezer. Yet somehow, he was now surrounded by a thick layer of frost. His fingers stiff, he struggled to unlock his car. The engine took a few moments to turn over, and when it finally did, he peeled away from the store as fast as he could. The incident stayed with him. Every time he passed a Costco, he'd remember that awful feeling of dread, the unsettling silence of the empty warehouse, the piercing cry from the freezer, and the bone-chilling cold that had seeped into his very bones. 1 year later, Daniel was working the graveyard shift at a small bookstore when his manager, Sarah, asked him for a favor. "Would you stay late tonight? I need to finish unpacking this new shipment." It was just another Tuesday night. Nothing seemed amiss. God. As he scanned the books, he felt a sense of familiarity, almost as if he'd done this 1,000 times before. The scent of paper and ink, the soft rustle of turning pages, the dim glow of the overhead lights. It was comfortable, almost mundane, till it wasn't. Just as he was finishing up, he heard a noise that made him freeze. A low, guttural growl, as if something large and predatory was just beyond his perception, watching, waiting. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the sound as a figment of his imagination. But the growl came again, closer this time. Fear tightened its grip on him. The growl was definitely coming from the back of the store, from the area where they kept the overstock in the boxes. He needed to get out of there. But as he turned to leave, he spotted a figure in the shadows. Tall, gaunt, and emaciated, it seemed to be made of darkness itself. Its eyes glowed with an eerie green light, and its lips curled into a grotesque parody of a smile. Daniel froze, unable to move, unable to scream. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the figure vanished into the darkness. Shaking and breathless, Daniel fled to the safety of the street. He didn't stop running until he reached his car, his heart pounding in his chest. Safe inside his vehicle, he tried to catch his breath, to calm the tremors that racked his body. But as the adrenaline slowly ebbed away, a new sensation crept in, a bone-deep chill that had nothing to do with the autumn night. He was freezing. His teeth chattered, his fingers stiffened, and a thin layer of frost began to form on the windows. He stared in disbelief as frost spread across his windshield, mirroring the creeping ice on his skin. Panic surged through him. He tried to turn the heater on, but it was too late. The cold was already spreading, seeping into his very core. The temperature gauge on the dashboard plummeted into the red, mimicking the growing frostbite on his fingers. His vision blurred, his thoughts slowed, and then everything went black. When he woke up, he was in his bed, wrapped in a thick blanket. The morning sun streamed through his window, casting a warm glow on his face. Had it all been a dream, he wondered, rubbing the frost off his eyelids? He sat up, his gaze falling on the windows. They were covered in a thick layer of ice. But the strangest thing was his body. It was completely frozen, encased in a block of ice. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and a thin layer of frost covered his entire body. He tried to move, but his limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. He looked down at his hands. They were like blocks of marble, smooth, cold, and unyielding. With a surge of panic, he realized he wasn't breathing. He was dead. He was trapped in his own frozen prison, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to do anything. He was a living statue, forever frozen in time. He screamed silently, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness of his icy tomb. No one could hear him. No one could save him. He was utterly alone. No. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The coldness receded, his skin warmed, his muscles relaxed, could move, he could breathe. He was alive. But that brief glimpse into the icy abyss had changed him. He was never warm again. His skin stayed pale, his breath always visible. Sometimes when he walks past a freezer aisle, even at other stores, the metal doors rattle. One day, he got a delivery at home. It's no return address, no name, just a Costco box. Inside was a single item, a cake. It looked identical to the ones he used to decorate at work. On top, a neatly written note. Ready for your next shift? That was the last straw. Daniel quit that night. He couldn't take the constant fear, the chilling premonition that something sinister was always lurking just beyond his sight, waiting to drag him back into the icy depths of the freezer. Now, he lives in constant fear of that same cold seeping into his life once more, determined to trap him forever. Some nights he dreams of the freezer, the endless rows of ice, the mournful cry, not the terrible knowledge that there are some things that are better left undiscovered.